Hi, Elliot. How are you?
I'm George, and good morning and good evening to you. Yes,
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be on the Training Master series, and we're so glad to have you on.
I'm honored to be with you today. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I have been friends for how long? For a long time, I would say. Well, you appeared to me. I first to come to know you was about 20 years ago.
20 years ago,
At that
yes.
time, about 20 years ago, when I was still in the US and I was working for US West and then Quest, and I started to receive daily emails, the
Hmm.
Masie emails, the future learning, the e-learning and everything. So I learned, I read, that's my daily read. And I read a lot and learned a lot. First of all, thank you.
Thank, thank you.
Thank you for those emails, daily emails. Are really one of the many beneficiaries. So, first of all, just for our audience, would you please introduce yourself a little bit and tell us where you grew up, where you went to college, what you studied, and let us know where you live and work now.
Great. Well, ni hao. My name is Elliott Masie, and I right now I'm coming to you from New York State in the United States, not New York City. I have an apartment there, but our home is here in upstate New York, in Saratoga Springs, a town with horses and health, and this is where I have been spending all my time during the pandemic. I grew up, though, in New York City, and I am the child of immigrants from Russia and from Germany. And so I am a first generation American, and I have lived mainly in the United States, although until the pandemic, I was usually on an airplane to another city or country about 2 or 3 times a week. So I have been to Asia many, many, many times, and most of the countries, including Antarctica in the far south. Yeah, I went to
Really?
college in New York State, and my background was sociology and management. So that was my original background.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And just for our audience, that Elliot was the keynote speaker last year in 2019, the Training Magazine Conference held in Suzhou annual conference, keynote speaker. And he was there. He saw the prosperous conference and he saw so many, he saw, I mean, the prosperity of our conference. And he was
It's
amazed.
amazing.
And he sees that there's a lot of potential in the Chinese training market. Would you agree with me?
Oh, totally. And while I was there, we not only were at the conference, but then spent some time in Beijing with Weibo and Baidu and Beijing University. You always have to realize that when an economy is growing, learning and training are important. And when an economy is changing, learning and training is important. And when the world is changing, learning and training are important. So all of those three things were very clear in China. I will say one of the most interactive keynotes I've ever done. I There were probably about maybe 2,000 people in the room. I think I got about 900 WeChat messages during my actual speech. So I put my WeChat barcode up on the screen, and so it was. And I continued to hear from it. And I will tell you, two of the people from that group sent me masks. So when the pandemic hit the United States, it was hard to get masks, and all of a sudden, two envelopes arrived with masks and face covers. So I'm deeply grateful to my friends there.
Love from China.
Yes, love from China, absolutely.
Well, I'm amazed. I'm amazed. I mean,
Well,
recently, yeah. And New York State had a great governor, and I don't know you're Republican or Democrat, but he's really great. He's been
yeah,
doing 111 days of daily briefings on
yeah.
coronavirus and really helped control the pandemic.
It's been interesting. I will tell you I'm an independent. I've worked for presidents of both parties, and I live only 28 miles from the governor here. I think it's been a time of learning for everybody in the world, but I think it's been a time of learning for people in America to figure out what type of leadership do they want, what's the role of science. And we've had, as everybody knows, lots of controversy with that. But controversy often leads to learning. So I think we're all learning, and it'll be very interesting with an election coming up. We'll see how America's views of leadership may be changing. So it'll be an interesting time. I will share it's been difficult just on a personal level to see when people become so critical of China about the pandemic. We live in a global world and things travel, whether they be disease or technology or mythology. And so I want to apologize to my friends who think they are overly blamed for that. It's not. We live in a global world and things go around the world. And
We are. It
yeah.
is. It is. It is true. We'll come back to that later on the leadership question, and then we'll pick up on that. And uh, talking about the pandemic, we are in it right now. So first thing first, let's do the first thing first. How do you predict that the pandemic will impact our field, our learning development field? Is there any lessons learned from the pandemic? So far, we
Yes,
have research.
I think it's been a very big moment. There are three things that we sense. Last night, I was at 9 o'clock last night, I was doing an interview with a group from Australia that runs the mines in Australia. And earlier in the day, I was talking with some folks from Ericsson in Europe who do technology. The pandemic has changed three things. Number one, it's changed the default or assumed style of delivery. You know, even with all the e-learning that's been there, we've always assumed that the number one style will be a teacher in a room with 20 students. And that's not going away, George. We're still going to do some, but I think the world has accepted now that we are going to have more and more experiences that are digital in the learning world. And some of them will be structured classes, and some of them will be conversations on Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft Teams. So that's been the one change. The
Right.
second change, though, has been, and I hope my training friends are not too upset by me saying this, but the learners don't want a lot more classes. They
Hmm.
want support, knowledge, and readiness to do new roles and jobs. So we have found that some of our learners have gotten tired of how many webinars are being sent to them every day.
Right.
One person said, I think I have the webinar virus as well as being exposed to the coronavirus. But the third piece, and I think it's an important piece, George,
Uh-huh.
is that learning needs to be sensitive to and respond to and be aware of
Mhm.
the other issues that are in the lives of our employees. As some people will know, you know, in the United States, right in the middle of the pandemic, we
Mhm.
had some very horrible murders of black people and protests that have started all around the country on racial injustice. In the learning field, you can't ignore that. You know, it's if it's
Right.
on the minds of your learners, then it doesn't have to become part of the curriculum, but it's part of the reality of that. So I would say that the learning field has never been more important because it's having to react to the changes, you know, the changes in our workplace, our work style,
Right.
and even the diversity changes that are happening there. And we've been important. Learning has been pretty important. In fact, we've had to learn new skills like, you
Right.
know, health and wellness and the like. Yeah.
The pandemic will never probably so far. Well, from the medical world, they say this is going to be a way of life to
Yeah.
avoid, social distancing and new ways of social life and the way people connecting each other, interact with each other. So, and these three changes will deeply affect the delivery part of learning.
Yeah.
Will that affect the back end of the design part of the learning and development? That's more kind of on the back.
It changes everything, George. Yesterday, I spent time with one of the largest technology companies that does an annual conference every year of 5,000 people in their company who are salespeople on technology. And it's often done in a big resort in the United States, Las Vegas or New Orleans, Orlando. Well, their conference is scheduled for next March. And we were on the phone. That conference can't happen the way it normally happens. You can't put 5,000 people into a big hall and assume that people will want to travel there. So I was working with them to rethink the conference, and maybe there are smaller conferences that people drive to rather than get on an airplane. And maybe they only come for 2 days and 1 night, and maybe they're not in a gigantic hall. Maybe they're in rooms with 40 people, and there are more like labs. So I think you're correct. I don't think the pandemic is going to end. I think the pandemic will be part of, I'm an old PC person. I view this as Control Alt Delete on the old Windows. I think we've sort of reset a little bit. And in it,
Okay.
there are changes that are not about the pandemic, but people may say, do we need those big office buildings? Or can people work from home? Do we want people to necessarily always come for 1 day of learning? Or maybe we want to have 1 hour of learning for 9 different days, over 3 months. So I think our designs will change. I think our models will change. Even the economics will change. Because one of the tough parts in many parts of the world, people don't know how to pay for e-learning. If I give a class, people assume I have to pay you some RMs or dollars or the like.
Right.
But if I give you an e-learning program, it's on the internet. Shouldn't it be free? Now it's not. But we haven't figured out the economics of the digital world of learning totally yet. So yeah, this is going to be a long, long, long time. This is our future, not just a strange year of change.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So the pandemic will not only change the delivery part of learning, but also affect the design part of the learning, which is the back office. So is learning development as a whole is going to be impacted? And so a lot nowadays we have you have been in e-learning for so many decades, and you are one of the top e-learning leaders in the United States from the 1980s and 90s, and so right now is year 2020. What do you see? So when and virtual learning works, what are really working? What are the keys to successful virtual
Well, when we first started the word e-learning, it meant electronic learning.
learning?
But I always thought, you've heard me say this before, George, that there are other things the E can stand for: engaging,
Right.
emotional,
There are 20 of
evolving.
them. These.
Yeah, we can keep going. There are 8 or 9 different E's.
Right.
I think we have to add the E's to e-learning. I'll give you an E that's very important, which is engagement. Don't ask me to go on to a live webinar and be quiet for an hour. That's stupid. If you're
Right.
going to have me go on a webinar, engage me. If not, send me the digital file and I'll watch it, on my own. I think we need to build more evaluation into e-learning beyond just did they like it, but what parts were most helpful. I think we need to involve people getting a deeper simulation of what they are learning. So I think this is where augmented reality and VR will become a part of it. And I think we also need to deal with the fact that nobody learns something with one time of instruction. You can't teach a baby how to walk with one lesson. You can't teach somebody how to drive with one lesson. I don't think you can teach them how to be an auditor in a tax company with one lesson. So I think we need to move to where learning happens several times and we build our skills. To be honest, I think my colleagues in China have more of a history of the tradition of a mentor and somebody learning. And I think in the United States, we had more of a church model where we kind of gave them the one lecture and they got it. I like to try things, even fail multiple times. So I think e-learning needs to become more natural and more engaged in that process.
To increase e-learning, I mean, in the past we said, e-learning, virtual learning is all the key is interaction. The key is interaction. And now, just now you mentioned the AR and the VR. Do you think they will dominate the market? They'll
Yes,
be
they will.
widely.
Let me make a prediction that was actually it stopped for a bit because of the pandemic, but you'll see it soon. Our biggest problem with VR has been it's been based on Xbox gaming. The VR
Right.
model was that you wore goggles.
Yeah.
That you were
Big
or you
goggles.
were a teenager on the couch with two friends and playing.
Right.
I actually think the best form of VR to date has been Pokemon Go,
Oh,
where you pick up your phone and you point it towards something and it's richer than it is. I will tell you there's been much work done at Microsoft, at Google, at Apple. I'm sure in China you will probably see some work done at Baidu and Weibo and Alibaba, and Facebook is working on it. They bought Oculus. I think we're going to move to where augmented reality will be the word, not virtual reality, meaning I will be able to look at you. So just imagine if we had this, somebody could
right.
look at Elliot and
Right.
in real time it would be showing in Mandarin, in Cantonese,
Right.
in Japanese, but it also would be checking everything I said against Google to see, if it was true or how to go deeper. I think we are going to have more and more augmented reality occur during our time, and watch for those companies to do it, because as long as VR was goggles and as long as VR took a lot of money to build, we couldn't grow it. Okay, what we need to do
Right.
is we need to figure out how to make VR natural, just a part of the process.
So the pandemic will not only affect the delivery side and also the design side as well, and also reality. We talked about VR and AR.
Hmm.
One thing that you mentioned very, very important that a couple of years back, like 3 years back, VR was so popular in China, but suddenly it died. It died off, and nobody sees it. Nobody talk about it. Not even anybody mention about it anymore today. So what? But 3 years ago, like everybody's talking about it, and there's a lot of hot money into it.
Right.
Uh, the basic reason is it's too expensive. But how AR will come over that?
Well, I think the lesson in China, and it was the lesson everywhere in the world. I was in Africa, in Rwanda, about a year ago, and they were using VR to train people to work at the Volkswagen plant. If the cost per VR station is a lot of money in to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the cost to build the VR is a lot of money to build it, then it's only going to be used in small ways. On the other hand, you think about our phones, okay? Everybody takes out their phone and they maybe go
Right.
and they look in WeChat, or they take a picture, or they go into Alipay, meaning we've made the technology that people use simple. We've made it one touch, and it
Right.
works.
Right.
VR has not been one touch. VR has been many touches and many RMs or dollars for that.
Right.
It will get simpler for two reasons. The people who are marketing products want them to come alive, particularly if our stores may not be the safest place to go. And the second reason is that what we've experienced even right now, okay, George, where you and I
Mm-hmm.
are sitting in different parts of the world and we're connected by Zoom.
Right.
What if instead of sitting, we had a life-size George, a life-size Elliott? You know,
Right.
what
As
if,
3D, right?
yeah, but not only 3D, what if I could pass you something? You know, like I could
Right.
hand it to you. Um, as we connect with people, we will want more richness
Right.
and reality to that connection. And I have a friend who's working on a startup now that you will be able to press a button and a scent, the smell of a flower will come out. So, you know, you could send a fragrance online. I think these things will all come, but they'll come because the marketplace wants them, and they'll come because people want them as part of their lives. But they will not be hardware based. We can't, you know, that's why Pokemon Go was a great example of not a hardware based. It just used the camera and an app. So we'll see those next, but it will require some startups, and it will require, I think, the youngest generation saying we want that. You know, they will help push it into reality.
Does it's also relate to our next question, that you said one time that recently that we need to reimagine learning. What do you mean by reimagine learning? Is that part of AR? Is your part of your reimagination, or any
Yeah.
like virtual learning? How
Let,
do we reimagine?
let me be very honest. If I needed to learn something now, I am the young age of 70 years, okay? I'm active, I'm youthful. If I wanted to learn something now, I don't know if I want to go to a 3-day class. You know,
Right.
great teacher, great curriculum, good meals. But I think our learners are changing. So I would be glad to go to maybe a lab. I know when you conduct things, you see people very interactive. You know, we want to come together to do something, not just come together to listen, you know. And I believe that what's changing about learning is that the learner has more opinions now. Here's a good example. I did a video online with Marshall Goldsmith, a good friend of mine, a management guru. It was a great video. We had thousands of people watching it online. And then I put it up on one of my websites and I watched. And you know what I saw? Thousands of people started the video, George. Most people left after 6 minutes.
Why is that?
Not because it was a bad video, but they had enough. They want the dim sum of learning, you know. they got
Fast
the
food.
char siu bao and the har gao, and you know, and they got Marshall's joke and my piece,
Uh-huh.
and they said enough. Now they may have come back to it. I couldn't track it well enough, but our learners are becoming very opinionated. You know,
Right.
so we're finding even in the world of television, programs are getting shorter. You know,
Right.
People may want to watch 10 of them in one night. So I think our learners are driving us to change learning. And finally, the speed to which the world is changing is faster than ever. Faster than ever. And I have a colleague, I met her when she made me a cappuccino at the hotel in Beijing. And I guess she looked me up on the internet and said she was, impressed. She met somebody who helped develop e-learning, and she lives with her family. And I've never met her again, but we do email 2-3 times a year. Well, during the pandemic, she now is working from her family's home, and she had to learn a whole new set of skills, of how she was going to do her job, not at the office, not with her colleagues. So as the learner changes, learning will change. And we have more competition and more pressure, and that's the world we live in now. Yeah.
If we are changing our learning habits, well, first of all, learning in Chinese, you probably know a little bit about it, right? Is that learning is a very formal thing.
Yes.
In when we were brought up, and as a childhood, learning meaning you dress up, you get a backpack, you go to school, stay there, have lunch, have afternoon class, and come home and report to have exam, and so learning almost a burden, and but it's a fun as well. But we learn a lot, but it's a very formal thing in any
Yes.
way. Anyway. So it's a very formal thing. I mean, school education is learning, but I don't think that a lot of people realize that learning actually is a daily thing. And at every
Yes.
moment, as a human being, we're learning. And we have been formalizing learning for so long, but people disregard or even forgot the informal side of learning. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, is information they're taking, we process it, we store it, we retrieve it, apply it, we use it, and then we gain results. But now, everything goes online, and then everybody's pushed online. And then, people need to foster new habits. And in one of your recent talks that you said that we need to depart about we need to foster some, build some new learning habits. What are the new learning habits do you think that we get ready? And the second part of the question is, you talk about AR and everything is changing, and AR is ahead of us. So what do we need to know?
Right.
What do we need to do now? Do we wait, passively wait, or actively preparing, and how?
Well, let's start with your story, George.
Okay.
When learning is formal, and I lead formal sessions, you've led formal sessions,
Right.
inevitably you make an assessment of what do the people know and what do they need to know at the end of the program. And bluntly, you make it based on your habits, your tradition, or maybe even the curriculum that has been given to you. We now live in the world of data.
Right.
So let's say I'm teaching management skills. I may have 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
10 of them have never been managers before. So they start here. But of those 10, 3 of them, their parents were managers. So they know a little bit more. But 10 of them were managers at another company.
Mm-hmm.
I can't teach the same exact thing to everybody at the same time. If, in other words, when I use data, I have to start and understand what is it that each of these people need to know, And what I found is that the first new skill is data. We need to be able to look at the data about our learners. What do they know? What do they not know? One of my new habits, I always begin every class with a test or an assessment. I give them the test or assessment they will have at the end of the class. which means probably they're going to get maybe 10% of it right. But now I know which 10% they already know. And now I bring them, so data is one of them. The second piece that I think is different than ever is that the learner wants to practice what they're learning much more. And sometimes when we're teaching, we have our stories and our lectures and our PowerPoint, and we know how to deliver that. But you go to a student and you ask them, what did you enjoy about George's or Elliott's program? They're not going to tell you about the PowerPoint. They're going to tell you when they did an activity, when they did a work, when they did a simulation, when they did a lab. So I actually think what we have to learn how to do is how to make learning more active. Because passive learning, which is important, can happen without a class, without a teacher. Send me the video.
Right.
But when you bring me together, when I'm with an expert like you, George, now I want to do something with that person, not just listen to them. And those are some of the ways in which learning will change. And you mentioned one of my favorite phrases, everyday learning. You know, I would say the E in e-learning becomes everyday. But everyday learning means we're not going to learn it today on Thursday. We're going to learn it on Thursday and next Tuesday and next Friday. You know, we're going to have to keep learning in that process. And that's new because we were used to giving our program, giving them a certificate, applauding, and get the next group in. It's not going to be that easy. We're going to have to continue with them much longer.
The year 2020, you have also been regarded as one of the futurists, and in technology-based learning, e-learning. 20 years ago, I followed a lot of your works, and I predicted, I felt at that time, e-learning, because at the US-wide Quest, we're very big on e-learning. You know, Mark Rosenberg cited us. We had, Mark cited us, and Michael Allen, and those are they are also on my interview list. And Mike is going to be, I'm going to have an interview with Mike probably next week. They're all great. And at that time I thought, well, Elliott might be right, because the future, everything is wired up. Everybody is wired up. Like right now, you have a lot of gigs at home. I have a lot of gigs at home. Well, probably at different levels, but we are also interviewing somebody else, and we are being interviewed by somebody else.
Right.
And now, so the thing is, we have to prepare for it, and now we have to abandon something. We have to drop something, and then. Like some of the learning traditions that you also mentioned lately. So what are those learning traditions that we need to let go and to prepare and adopt for the future?
I think our classes will get shorter.
Okay.
I think some of our classes will be, I use the word hybrid or mixed, meaning they'll do some of them on e-learning and they'll do some of them with colleagues, maybe in a classroom or maybe at their office.
Okay.
I think we have to accept, and this will be very difficult for my friends in China, because so much of your education involve memorizing.
Oh yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We're not going to memorize much anymore. I did some work for the United States Navy, and they said something. We don't want our sailors to memorize anything because it will change tomorrow. So when they come to work each day, they will turn on their system and it will show them what are new features, programs, or missions. So we need them to be smart, but not always to memorize, because more of the knowledge will be online. And this is the most interesting piece of this. We need to become more dependent on each other for conversations, for knowledge, even for arguments. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I teach a course at Wharton, and one of the things I do in my course is I assign people to groups of two of the MBA students. But I assign them because I know they'll disagree with each other a lot. And I tell them, your assignment is to argue for 2 hours between now and next week. Now, everybody thought I was crazy at the beginning about that. People have come back. I love arguing with her. And in fact, I think she changed her mind, or she changed my mind in that. But in this networked world, you know, where I put a picture on WeChat, and suddenly people that I met, you know, at that conference type back and tell me about their family. You know, that's the world we live in. But that's the world that learning has to live in as well. And the old way is not going away. We're still going to do some things that are formal. But the activities are going to be more networked. I think they're going to be more personal. And they're going to be less about memorization.
Great, great. So the tradition and new habits will be in coexistence, and none of them can leave each other. Like you paired those Wharton students, MBA students up, and that's a good way to do it.
Well, let me give you a little story.
Sure.
I am on the board of directors of a company. And we were hiring a person to be one of our number 2, number 3 leaders. And we interviewed some people. And there was one person that I really enjoyed, and everybody really enjoyed her. And she was a woman, and that was good. They needed a woman in their leadership role. And she explained all the things that she did. She had a very strong background. And then she did something beautiful. She said to the group, including me, I'm not very good at numbers. I'm not good at numbers.
She literally said that. She
right in the interview. She said, now, I understand numbers, but in my current job, I have somebody who's my numbers man.
Okay.
And I give him the numbers, and he gives them to me. And she said, so if you hire me, I'm going to get a number man or woman to work with me because I'm good at everything else, but no, I don't like to do the numbers. She left the room, and I said, wow, we're going to hire her. 5 of the people said we can't hire her because she's not good at numbers. Now, that's the old model of leadership, which means somebody pretends to be good at everything. But you know that a good leader has an IT person who helps them with tech. They might even have somebody who's a good speechwriter, or even they have somebody who's good at engineering. So
of course.
we have to become part of teams. And part of teams is recognizing there's some things I'm not good at, you know, and I will let other people do that for me. But that's a change in culture.
Absolutely. That's the new type of leadership. And we had a leadership later, but I know that you are a good friend of Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Michelle Obama, President Obama, and they're all great leaders. And Bill Clinton and Obama are both my favorite leaders. And when I was in the United States, Bill was still in the office, and he is a great leader. He's just a lawyer. Basically, he's just a lawyer. He doesn't know numbers, but he has Summers, Lawrence, and he doesn't know, but he has Sir William Cohen, and he doesn't know any diplomacy, but he has somebody else, and he has the woman, lady Secretary of State, and he had everybody taking care of everything, but he is the epic center. He is the epic center. I call it all the president's man, you know, like the movie. And they all work beautifully. And none of them can work alone. I mean, they're a team.
No, but here's the challenge, George. When we train people, we train them almost pretending they're going to work alone.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than saying, okay, the three of you are on a team and the three of you have to succeed together. So I would rather take the three of them, and at the end I give a grade or a score to the team rather than just to the individual. Because sometimes we make people pretend that they know things that they actually don't know, or they know them, but they're not comfortable doing them. You know,
Right.
I found people who say, I don't like to do public speaking. I love doing public speaking. I've done public speaking all my life. But I can accept that for some people, they won't sleep last night if they had to do what I'm doing with you right now. It would make them nervous. We have to accept that some people may have the skill, but they may not have the comfort inside. So we need to make it a little different for them, you know?
Yeah, yeah. To make people interact with each other, and social media nowadays plays a very important role. And now, well, you have WeChat, and you put like last year at Suzhou and the training conference. Yeah, boom! Like how many? 900?
Yeah, but let me give you another. I got WeChat many years ago because I've worked with my colleagues in China and many of the U.S. Chinese students who are here. So I went to a conference, and I shall not name the name of the conference. I've been to, I think, 6 conferences, and I was the only English speaker there as the keynote.
Okay. In the United States or China?
No, I was in China. So I was the only white guy giving the speech there. They forgot to hire the translator, George, you know?
Oh.
So it was an interesting moment. And one of them said, well, so-and-so can translate. Maybe she could do it. I said, no. I got at the beginning of the speech, and I said, okay, everybody go on to WeChat. I put my thing up there. And we set up a little WeChat group. I said, I'm going to speak in English, and I would like you to collectively translate it. And I think there were 300 people at the speech. And suddenly, while I'm speaking, they're having an even better speech from me in Mandarin from the 300 people there. And I said, if there's a question, just stand up. Don't raise your hand. Just stand up and ask me the question. So people were popping up in the audience. The director of the conference was having a heart attack. I thought he was going to die because he had lost control.
Right.
But it was the best session, not because of Elliott. It was not the best session because of me.
Right.
It was the best session because we threw away the old model of a keynote.
Right.
And we changed it on the spot. And so I think we have to use the technology and use it differently, and be willing to say it's not, like I always tell people, what's one part of the lesson you don't want me to do? They get to vote for one piece to throw out of the class. I go, it's online if you need it. But they get very happy with that. Vote when you want to go to lunch, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's hard if you're ordering lunch for 200 people, but sometimes when they can vote for going to lunch, they feel like it's their class, you know?
Right.
That's
very, very interesting. Well, I just learned a trick.
yeah. Important. But if you are playing the game to win the game, but not to really understand delegation, you don't engage yourself internally in the right way. So I like to use the word game elements, meaning in any program I do, I build game elements. I build competition. I build in a way for somebody to stretch themselves. But I don't usually want to call it a game. I don't let it feel like a game. But while they're in it, it feels that way. Same way in the old days, we might in a workshop have people turn to each other and say something or introduce each other, but we would never say, I want you to play a game before our content. You need to say, let's do the content and turn to another person and talk about good leadership, meaning the game can't be the motivation, the content has to be the motivation.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So content is king all the time.
Yes. And I think the best game is one that doesn't call itself a game, but it is a game. So a good example, I have some friends who only write me emails on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because they figure I don't answer my Monday or my Friday ones. So every time I get an email from them, I go, it must be Tuesday. Now, they don't know that I've made it into a game, but you can take life and find a game in it. But you shouldn't take life and make it a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we cannot do game for a game's sake.
Right. I don't think that's a wise thing from a workplace learning point of view. But I want to use all the fun elements of a game, all the fun elements of competition, and all the fun elements of challenge. But I don't want to call it a game, because I think people put it in a different part of their head. I won the game versus I became a better leader.
So game should be an effective portion of
yes,
very effective instruction or learning experience, but not the dominating factor, and could not be done game could not be done for game's sake, and people should really rely on content.
Right. And game can just be how we are doing it. It's, right. You can do a project with somebody and you find yourself competing. That's wonderful. But I don't think we want to turn all learning into a game environment, because I don't think we remember the content when we win the game. We remember winning the game.
There is always in Chinese, because in the past, ancient times, probably from thousands of years ago, and there's this word is that, you learn to have fun. And right. Then, game is like, we narrow it down, but you have fun and learn. And that's kind of that's really comply with the learning principles, that when the target audience is very relaxed, and then much more easier for them to think, and working memories and long-term memories and reinforcement, everything. So game is as I see it, it's just an instructional strategy then.
Yeah, and look, somebody who's a good speaker wants to tell a story, wants to make people smile or laugh, show a picture that, but that's just my technique. I don't want to make the technique the brand. I want to make the content the brand, or the skill the brand. Yeah,
I came across to know that Marshall Goldsmith that you mentioned earlier, he's really a very good business and management educator, and he's really experienced. He's such a motivational speaker as well, as I see it, and I really want to get him on this interview as well in the future. So maybe
let me ask. He's very, very busy right now, but I'd be glad to send a note to you and him introducing you.
Sure. Maybe in the next 1 or 2 months when his tide is a little bit down.
We can do that.
Yeah. That's on the sideline. Thank you, sir. And the other thing is, continue on the game thing. Just one last hit is that's how you define the word gamification.
Yeah, and I love what games are. I use games as part of how I teach. I use games as how I learn. I just don't think, at least in American society, I want to use that word game too often in the world of corporate learning. I want to make learning engaging, enjoyable, memorable, but I don't want to overuse the word game as a word.
Mm-hmm. That's really, as I see it, that's really a balance. Must be a good balance between AR. I mean, in the future, AR is going to be dominating as you predicted earlier. And AR, there must be something, gaming factors, elements in it. I just say that,
absolutely.
And also, there in the corporate world, there are formal training and informal training. So there are two occasions, and and gaming come into the formal and informal equation, and then they have to play a very delicate role and not to ruin the party.
Well, let me tell you a little story. I was working with a technology company that had a store, like an Apple store, but it wasn't Apple. Mm-hmm. And they were teaching their people how to deal with difficult customers. Mm-hmm. So every day at the beginning of the day before the store opened, they went around and each person told about their most interesting or difficult customer from yesterday. And they got a point if they had the best story. Now, you couldn't do anything with the points. You couldn't get a free computer or the like, but they gave a point. In other words, they added competition to it to add a spirit of game, but they didn't call it a game. It became a very important thing to every day learn how do we deal with our most difficult customers.
But do the employees take the point very seriously?
Yeah, well, they did, but they couldn't do anything with the point. You couldn't turn it in for flowers or buy a free computer with them. But people would go, "You got the point today, Joe." Was. So a game is a great device. It's a great strategy, but I'm not sure I want to use it as the brand always.
Right. So it's a way of informal reward to the employees who have done things right, or who has been extraordinary. So it's more spiritual or in value recognition.
Right, and you go on an airline, and people will, the pilots will talk about the simulators that they've been in and how challenging they were. But you would never call the simulator a game. But the reality is, it's got a game quality to it. But you don't want their boss to say, "I'm going off to play the simulator game." No, they're going off to fly the 747 in the flight simulator. Yeah.
The flight simulator is very expensive one, and millions of dollars one each cost. And,
right.
And that's also one of my favorite topics that I always talk in my instructional design class when I teach, because I always use it as an example of learning transfer from the classroom to the real workplace. No matter how the learning transfer, that's a simulation from the classroom to so that's also my favorite topic as well. So let's switch gear a little bit. Let me move into another question about measurement in learning. I know you have done some research on the measurement of learning effectiveness, and that perplexation also existed in China for more than 2 decades. Ever since training has picked up the speed, took off a little bit, and so the value of learning and function and learning functions, learning professionals' value. How do we prove them? That's a kind of a mystery. So what's your take on that?
I think there are 3 things about we need to do when we evaluate learning or the like. First of all, I think we should spend more time evaluating the impact it has on the business more than how did the learner enjoy it. So if it's sales training, did our sales go up? If it's leadership training, was the person promoted in 1 year? If it is technology training, were they able to use the computer without calling the help desk or support desk? I think we do too much focus on did you like the learning or did you enjoy the learning. I actually want to measure, did it change the business at all? So that's number one. Number two, I think we should spend more time asking the people who have completed learning, what could we do next time that would make this better? I don't even care whether they give it a grade. You know, grades are grades.
Right.
But I want to hear, what would you do next time? Would you make it longer, shorter? Would you do more or examples or the like? Where we really ask the learner to be our consultant on how do we improve that. The third piece that we need to look at is the degree to which the learner leaves the training and is confident in how they can use it in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to look at that because in many cases, the impact of the learning is not how much content does the learner have, but how much confidence do they have in what they just learned.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. That's really a kind of as I see it as a decade-long or century-long question or public mystery and the value of training. We all know that training do have value.
Yes.
Training and learning and development and all that do have value, and we just how to combine with business. But your suggestion is really hit on the 3 points that to look at what impact we had on the business, because that's the goal, not just the process. Learning is just a process, not the target.
Right.
So, and the confidence level, I think that's really new. That's really that training needs to focus on and pay more attention to.
Perfect.
Great. I know that we don't have a lot more time. I know you're very busy, but I do want to talk a little bit about leadership development.
Sure.
As I mentioned earlier, that you have been very close friends with Madam Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama and the presidents, and so they have had very smart people. I mean, just smartest people probably in the world, and surrounded. You know, they were surrounded by them, and they built very good teams. So during the pandemic, with the pandemic or without the pandemic, what's your take on leadership development?
Well, this is a difficult and political question, but I don't mind it. I think you know how good a leader is by what happens in the bad times more than what happens in the good times.
Oh yeah. Winston Churchill.
I think we have learned in the United States that we got the leader that people thought they asked for. In the age of television, we got a television character, you know?
Right.
Now, I did not vote for Mr. Trump. And I wish that Hillary had won instead. And she had even mentioned I might become the chief learning officer if she did. But forget that role. But I know many people who voted for Mr. Trump, and what they all thought was what you said, George. Well, he's different, but he'll bring really good people into the government. He'll build a team. No, he didn't. You know, in fact, he brought people in, many of whom left because they tried to tell him the truth. So in the end, he's surrounded by people who say, yes, sir, yes, sir. Our biggest problem in the United States right now is that we don't have a single trusted leader giving people direction and support and empathy in these times. And if you look around the world, the countries that have been able to control the pandemic have leaders that the people trust. And it doesn't matter whether they are a democracy or not a democracy or big or small. You need to trust your leaders. The country has a choice to make in November, and I'm hoping that I hope we help him retire. But in the world, our biggest problem is that we have world problems, but we don't have world solutions. So we need to solve the pandemic on a worldwide level. We need to solve cybersecurity on a worldwide level. We need to solve even unemployment on a worldwide level. So I hope what the pandemic does is it makes the next generation of leaders more open to working on a global level. Who knows who will get the first vaccine? Maybe it'll come out of Shanghai, maybe it'll come out of Finland, maybe it'll come out of Mexico. But we have to cooperate and figure out what do we do about this crazy virus. So that will take good leadership. And I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but I tend to like to have people who are good leaders as leaders. So
absolutely, that's on the society level. But how about at the business level? The business leadership is also a very huge topic as well. The business leadership is so important right now. There are so many enterprises, companies shut down, and then so many businesses have been impacted. And now is the time to demonstrate business leadership. So what do you think, business leaders?
Well, I think the best thing we can do right now is find leaders who, first of all, can acknowledge what we don't know. Because there's uncertainty. The second thing is we need people who will be authentic or will be very real. And the third piece is we need leaders who will ask people to work together to create solutions that are going to be brand new. And that requires trust and empathy. And I have watched that now from around the world. CEOs are doing that. They don't have the big answers, but they can say, work with us, and we'll figure some of this out.
So when they don't answer, they just tell you that they don't.
We don't know.
We don't know. I don't know, right?
We don't know. But together, we'll work it out.
We don't forget.
Together, we will do that.
Sure. Great. Thank you. On the sideline, I also will ask that you have been very active lately in the recent years, like in the Broadway productions, and you're also a Broadway
producer. Yeah.
So is that another business venture? I mean, on the sideline, they're parallel to
It's a passion venture. The truth is, you never make much money being a Broadway producer, but you get to meet really interesting people, and you get to be part of very exciting stories. But to me, it connects to what I do in learning, because they're both about storytelling.
Okay.
Learning is about storytelling. Broadway is about storytelling. Well, Broadway uses music, and learning doesn't use so much music. But I have found a way to connect them. In my heart, in my head, they are connected.
I just thought they're the other way around, and by doing learning, you're not making a lot of money, but by Broadway productions, you're making a lot of money.
No, I've done quite well. I created and sold conferences, and I've had a very successful.
Right.
And it's not over. I'm only 70 years old, so I have many more years ahead of me in the learning field.
Well, you're only a young man.
I'm a young man, absolutely.
Yeah, by the definition of the UN definition is 75.
Yes. I'm a young man.
Yes. And I'm very young too. I'm a kid.
So anyway, I have time for one more question, George, because then I need to go. So
sure. As a closing statement, you have been to China many, many times. You have many friends in Asia and especially in China. So if you had any advice to the young practitioners in developing countries and as a whole or to China, what do you say?
Well, I have some advice. Number one,
Sure.
be proud to be a learner. Whether or not you are a learning professional, it is important to be a learner. And make it part of your identity. When you meet somebody, hi, my name is Li Jing. My name is Elliott. And share with that person not only what you've done, but what you're now learning. What you are now learning. My second piece of advice is to become really good at listening. The problem with people in the training field is we know how to talk. We're good talkers. But the more you listen, the better the talker you are. The more you understand and hear the stories. And the third piece is understand that people are different than you are. You know, the largest learning that somebody can make is when they understand that the person they're talking to is different. They may be different by the food they eat. They may be different by what they value. They may be different by what their family is. They may be different by, are they more comfortable with numbers or pictures? But the biggest mistake we can make is to assume that people are just like us. And I will tell you, in spending a lot of time in China, that sometimes people make that mistake because there is more of a sense of that we are similar. But the moment I meet somebody in China or Africa or anywhere, I immediately look for how they're different. And I think that makes you a better person. I think it makes you a better leader. And I think it makes you a better learning professional to understand they're different. And the final piece of that is that even though they're different, you have a lot of things that are similar to them. And you have to find the thing that is similar. You know, so I have it over on the other table, but I have a whole bunch of red envelopes, you know, because, you know, when it's the holiday season, I like to give my friends from China and other parts of the world red envelopes, but they often turn around and they say, tell me what do you want in your red envelope? Like, you look for those things that you have in common, because that's part of the power there. But George, it's been a pleasure chatting with you and the people who are watching this, and I will get back to you with some of the things we talked about. And thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Elliott, and do take care. Bye bye.
Be well, George. Bye bye.
Bye bye. That's my interview with Elliott Masie. Did you enjoy it? I really do. This is an interview long overdue because it is a very interesting interview because it covers a lot of areas in technology. Elliott has been in this business for a few decades, and he is one of the co-creators of the concept of e-learning, and he has many definitions for the letter E. So in the future, we hope that we have other opportunities to interview him again and ask him to explain to us what his new definitions for those letter E's. Thank you, Elliott. Thank you for your efforts, and thank you for your prediction that in the future, technology will be fully engaged in our learning and development efforts. We'll keep hearing from you. Thank you. Next week, we're going to have the honor to interview Dr. Robert Brinkoff. Rob is a very renowned scholar and practitioner in this field for several decades. He's been in this business for over 50 years, half a century now, and now he is 80 years old. He's a retired professor emeritus from Western Michigan University, one of the hubs of the learning and practice in this nation and in the world. About 20 years ago, when I came across this book, High Impact Learning, I was so amazed by its views in this book. In this book, it says ADDIE is too linear, and we need to find a new way to develop our organizational members. So next week, let's expect to hear what Dr. Brinkhoff has to say. So thank you and good night.